Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host. Big episode today. Just got a little bigger with the news of an Elijah Molden extension, which I think is fantastic news. So we'll get into that. And we are here today to do our first ever offseason simulation. Specifically, we're going to tackle an all offense simulation and an all defense simulation. And then we're going to present the Chargers depth chart, and you guys can kind of weigh in on which version you like better. I think this also will highlight the amount of needs that this team has, and so while yes, there are definitely some big ticket free agents that the Chargers could potentially land. That money is going to go quick when you have as many needs as the Chargers do. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Tyler, fresh with a haircut. What's up, man? How you doing today?
Doing very well. Yes, the money does go very quickly, especially when a safety signs a 3-year, $18.75 million deal, which definitely changes things, and we're about to talk about that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. A lot of good stuff in here tonight. I'm curious to see where we went with certain decisions and everything like that. But first and foremost, the Elijah Molden contract, it was projected from PFF a 1-year, $4.5 million contract. Obviously, he was playing on his rookie contract previously. That's why the Chargers were able to get him for such an affordable trade acquisition. And so, according to Jeremy Fowler and Ian Rappaport and others, you guys know how all this goes down. He gets a 3-year contract for $18.75 million with $13.5 million in guaranteed. So we obviously won't know the specific cap hits, but I think it's pretty curious, and we'll kind of see what we want to take away in terms of like the roster construction for a 3-year contract for Elijah Molden. But we both advocated for him to return, and now that he has, Tyler, what are your kind of thoughts about Molden and where he fits with his Chargers team and your excitement level to have him back?
It's perfect. Him returning was not a surprise. We did our offseason primer talking about guys we wanted back, and Molden was definitely one of those guys. Yeah, sure, there were 10 guys we mentioned in that top 10, but Molden and Ford are really and Mac were our top 3, and there was no question about that. Molden was fantastic for this team. I'm glad to see them rewarding their own, even though it was not even a full season because there was no off season for him with the Chargers, but he was there from the jump once they traded for him towards the end of the preseason. It's perfect. I am shocked that he got a deal for 3 years and one with that much now, but he's worth it. Like what would Molden be worth? That is definitely what Molden is worth. I'm just surprised he ended up getting it, given the projections and the fact that he didn't finish the season. Not that it was an injury he couldn't come back from, but just some things in there. So I am surprised by the deal that he got, but he is worth the deal that he got. What he does for the defense, what he does for Minter, what he does as an individual player, but maybe more than anything, what he does for Derwin James. And I think that is the key. And people are mentioning, Alohi Gilman as a potential cut candidate. It is not just like safety 1, safety 2 for this team. Safety 3 is not just safety 3. Safety 3 is a genuine starter, at least when you have 3 good ones. Maybe if the Chargers didn't have options, Minter would change some things, but they saw, especially the second 2/3 of the season, what it means to have Elijah Molden, and I guess eventually they got Alohi Gilman from some injuries, but it was important to have 3 guys that were good and be out there so Derwin James could do what he could do. And so it's great for, I just think this contract is perfect. Bringing him back was perfect. Great stuff all around.
Yeah, I think, if you're coming into this Chargers team from the lens that Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter are looking at it, you probably watched the Chargers defenses of old and thought, man, they moved Derwin James around a lot. They must really like their other safeties, when it turns out that their other safeties besides Alohi were not very good. So if you're them, you're probably looking to shore that position up. And I think that's what this means from a roster construction standpoint. So no, I don't think Alohi Gilman's roster spot is in jeopardy. I think anybody rushing to judge that he is going to get cut is playing the wrong roster construction game. To me, this says that they're going to continue to move Derwin James around. And obviously they value Elijah Molden and what he brought to the table this highly because, again, PFF has a really good track record when it comes to predicting contracts. And so 3 years, $18.75 million for him is a really, really good deal that shows we believe in this player. We value this player long term. And we talked on the previous show that, there's some uncertainty at the safety position, right? Because Alohi Gilman's going to be a free agent after this upcoming year. Well, the Chargers were like, nah, there isn't. We love Elijah Molden, and we're going to bring him back and reward him with the contract that I think he deserves. And so is it a little, rich if you look at like the safety contracts? Maybe, but he's like safety like 19 on the market, like 6.3 or 6.4, whatever it comes out to per year. Really isn't that much for a player of his caliber. I mean, he was top 10 in safety grades on PFF. He had 3 interceptions. Really should have been 5. There were 2 that were wiped out by really, really dumb penalties from Bud Dupree and I can't remember who the other one was. 2 pass breakups. He had a fantastic season. He plays the pass. He makes impact plays against the pass. He plays the run incredibly well, in my opinion, too. So this is just the Chargers taking care of a guy who they really value. And I think it keeps Derwin clean. It allows Derwin to go around, play the slot, play in the box, do that whole thing. And now the Chargers, like they headed into last season saying, we feel like we have the best safety duo in the league. Now you keep Elijah Molden around long term. And they legitimately probably have probably is probably a really oxymoron, but they probably have the best safety trio in the league now that Elijah Molden is locked in long term.
Yeah. So right now, assuming no other contracts, and there will be, he would be safety 26 on the APY, which is kind of crazy. Behind Malik Hooker, Geno Stone, which I think kind of makes sense, and some of these guys. So I think it's perfect. I'm so glad that they brought him back.
Yeah, I am as well. He was truly one of the most impactful players on this team. And I'm glad you brought it up. He didn't have an offseason with this team. There was obviously some schematic familiarity because the Titans were going to run a similar system, but now he's going to have a full offseason with this team, with this coaching staff. We'll see what happens with the injury recovery. I can't imagine it's going poorly, or else the Chargers probably wouldn't sign a 3-year contract like this. So I just think it makes a lot of sense. I think, he'll get to have the full offseason again, which will be huge. There's just going to be a lot of continuity back there and potentially a sign of more continuity to come. I think this, the defense at least is going to have a lot of familiar faces back. Although I do think there are some positions that they should definitely agree, but hopefully not the last re-signing we see over the next few weeks for the Chargers.
Yeah, so cutting Alohi Gilman would free up $4.5 million in cap space. I just think for them that's kind of negligible. And frankly, I'm very happy Derwin James Jr. played basically the entire season. He hasn't normally done that.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be fine to have what is essentially like an 11. Well, we'll see what Molden makes this year. A $9 million 2025 cap hit for 2 safeties. Like, I don't mind that insurance policy at all.
Yeah, and Hanan or Hanan, I apologize if I said that wrong, but he brings up a great point. He is very well coordinated with Tarheeb. 2 of Tarheeb interceptions were because of Molden communicated with him during the play. The communication aspect of Elijah Molden was something I just was not really ready for. You brought up the training camp thing. This was his first year playing free safety. He was mostly a slot corner, box safety type hybrid in Tennessee. He was playing a new position for the first time, and the way that he was just completely dialed in. Obviously, the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit there. But so, I mean, you could be a great coach, and if the players are not receiving the information, it doesn't really matter. And so Elijah Molden deserves a lot of credit for the way things were communicated on the back end. The way that they were anticipating plays was always something I enjoyed watching, and Elijah was often a key piece there. So great point by Hanan or Hanan. Feel free and let us know in the chat how to say that correctly. But communication is so important as a safety, and Elijah Molden was just always on point there.
Yeah, it was evident from day one. Pretty impressive. And look, if they do want to move on from Gilman, they can do it at the end of this season because he'll walk and he'll probably potentially sign somewhere else. Could be a decent deal. Get a comp pick. Still have your safety too. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like the Chargers, they need three safeties. I think that's the lesson here from this contract. We'll see what happens with Alohi Gilman, but you know, cutting him just creates another need. Like we were already saying, like, oh, like maybe this team has to draft a safety in the the fourth, fifth round because Elijah Molden isn't back or something like that. And now they don't have to do that. So they probably will draft one late. We'll see. Tony Jefferson obviously has hinted that he wants to return. I'm sure the Chargers will be glad to have him back too. But I'm glad this need is taken off the board. I think a lot of free agency is shoring up needs. So in the draft, you can kind of take best player available. And this is obviously the first step in that direction for the Chargers this offseason.
Yep.
Quick little thing. The salary cap for the NFL is expected to increase. We don't know exactly how much, but Over the Cap does have this number adjusted. And so they previously were accounting for $68 million in cap space, I believe, for the Chargers. That number has gone up. And so we'll see exactly what their number exactly is. There's a certain outlet out there that is projecting a $20 million increase. That's not what over the cap is projecting, and over cap is the best in the business in my opinion. So the NFL is probably going to operate around a $5 to $10 million increase is basically what over the cap has projected going forward. So the other place, it was not operating under an increase already. So according to their numbers, sure, it's going up by 20, but over the cap was already baking in a increase, and now it's going to be a bigger increase, which will be good for the Chargers. Not that they're short on cap space, but an extra $5 million in cap space is definitely important.
Yeah, you could give it to a third safety.
Yeah, that's basically the way to view this right now.
Yeah.
Because the cap went up, the Chargers were able to bring back Elijah Molden.
Not bad, not bad.
Not bad. Okay. Let's get into the main segment of our show. Again, we're going to do an off-season simulation for the Chargers. We have each kind of picked certain free agents that we're going to bring back, certain free agents that we have targeted. And then we're also going to mention some draft prospects here that we each like. And so we're going to go, I'm going to take care of the offense. That's going to be my focus for this exercise. Tyler's focus was fixing the defense, although we'll see I don't know how much it needs fixing. But we're kind of taking both ends of the spectrum here. And then I think we'll circle back and kind of meet in the middle at some point. But the goal is obviously to kind of show you guys, there's a lot of people who do think that the offense should get all of the resources. And I can kind of understand why. But the defense does exist. The defense also plays football. So excited to dive into it. I guess for me, first and foremost, the big topic of conversation is the wide receiver position among the fan base. T. Higgins it is likely that he is going to get franchise tagged. So T. Higgins is not going to be in my projection for solving the offense. And full disclosure, once Davante Adams gets cut, he is going to be my number one choice, but he is not officially cut yet. So we are not going to talk about players like him, like Mark Andrews. If they are not cut yet, we can't talk about them this way. So maybe we can kind of circle back here. So no T. Higgins, no Davante Adams. I believe the Chargers are going to do their absolute best to figure out their X spot in free agency. And so in this scenario where there's no T, no Davante, I think that next person in line is a receiver that the Chargers have a lot of connections to, and that is Amari Cooper. Whether or not you believe he is worth the projected contract that he is going to get, I think is kind of irrelevant because this team has Sanjay Lal directly tied to him. Khalil Mack played with him. And you pointed this out. I completely missed this, but Navarro Bowman was a Raider at the end of his career. He also was on the Raiders when Amari Cooper was there. So there's a lot of connections. I think he fits perfectly with the kind of style that the Chargers need at that position. And so you get a player who has a high-level contested catch production, a player who previously has shown the ability to win versus man coverage. I'm a little concerned about what happened this past season, but I think there's this idea out there from a fan base perspective, like general NFL fans, that trading for players mid-season should automatically mean that those players just pick up and go. And this past season, there wasn't a single like mid-season trade acquisition that worked. Like all of them did not pan out. And so I'm a little bit more inclined to give some benefit of the doubt to Amari Cooper. So he's going to be my wide receiver. He's going to be my starting X wide receiver. And I'm also going to double dip. I have talked about this player previously, but I need Matt Collins on this team. So Matt Collins is going to be Amari Cooper's backup. So we are double dipping at X wide receiver. We are getting a special teams demon, someone who will block his ass off in Matt Collins. And if Amari Cooper does get hurt, I need some insurance after that because I don't want Quentin Johnston playing the X receiver again. It's just not something I'm interested in. So the fan base thinks the X receiver spot is the biggest problem. I am taking 2 shots at it, and I'm getting Amari Cooper and Matt Collins.
I think that's a fantastic route to go. If you decided on Matt Collins, I think that's very smart of you and something that I would consider in about 20 minutes when I get to talk about mine. Spoiler, I don't have as much money to spend on the offense.
Yeah.
So I definitely have Matt Collins. I don't have Amari Cooper, but I agree with you. If Devontae Adams is available and becomes available, of course, we're having a different conversation. He's not. I'm assuming also we didn't specify this like talking to each other, but there's no trades in here either. We're not targeting players that are potentially traded, but this and that, it's all rumors. So going after Cooper, I get obviously the connections as you mentioned. I get it. The number one thing, if I were in your shoes, maybe after center, but we talked about center being such a tricky spot this offseason. My number one priority is yes, absolutely solving receiver before I get into the draft.
Yeah, you bring up a couple good points, which I, as the podcast host, should have brought up. We are operating with around $80 million in spending space. So in this exercise, again, I should have led with this, but in this exercise, we are both deciding that Joey Bosa has been cut, and so has Trey Pipkins. So the Chargers would save $25 million by cutting Joey Bosa and $6.75 million by cutting Trey Pipkins. Again, I should have pointed that out first, and that's my mistake. So we're operating with $80 million in cap space-ish, especially now that the cap has gone up. And we are each focusing primarily on the offense, defense, but we can't just like spend all the money right on one side. So essentially for me, I ended up spending $45 million of the 80 on offense. So we'll get to the rest of those names, but the receiver, like it was just like calling my name, blinking sign. So I went there. That's my mistake. We could rewind now and go back to kind of how we are both operating there. You mentioned center. That is a position that I am going to address. I believe that Bradley Bozeman will be the starting center for the Chargers next year. Yep. However, if I'm fixing the offense, I'm signing Ryan Kelly. That is just something that I am going out to do. I'm a little concerned again about his injury history. He has not played over 1,000 snaps in 2 of the last 3 seasons. There's back injuries, but I think for the Chargers, it's worth the risk, right? I think you can backlog this by drafting a center, which I am going to do in this exercise. Jake Majors from Texas is my guy of choice in this specific class. So I'm taking a prospect that I believe in, and you're doing essentially what the Colts did this past year when they took Tanner Bortolini. And so Ryan Kelly is going to be my starter. I'm fully expecting 13 games out of him. I'm not expecting a full 17-game season, but I think the upgrade from Bradley Bozeman to Ryan Kelly is worth the risk. And does it happen in real life? Probably not. But Ryan Kelly is going to be my center. I'm basically, for those wondering, again, I should have mentioned this earlier, we're essentially copying and pasting the PFF contract projections into our projected cap hits. And so Ryan Kelly is projected to sign a contract from PFF, I think at $9 million. We can update these, but essentially I took that as a $7 million cap hit. So the biggest 2 needs for the Chargers, according to the fan base, and I kind of do agree, we can talk about some of the other ones, are X receiver and center. And so I'm starting out with Matt Collins, Amari Cooper, double dip there, and then Ryan Kelly and Jake Majors double dipping there.
Love it. Solving center. I did not know enough of the draft prospects in the draft to like go after a majors or this guy in round 5. I can definitely tell you that of the couple I've watched, you're not finding anything like last year's class in round 5, 6, or 7, unfortunately. So it's a tricky group as far as I can tell early on. But yes, Ryan Kelly's APY is 9.5 million. I definitely don't know that because of anything that I did.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the big ones. One of my non-negotiables of this offseason is going to be that I need Patrick McCarry to be on the Chargers.
Gotcha.
So in this scenario, I am signing Patrick McCarry as well. He is going to play right guard with me on this team, and he hasn't played there a ton. Of the 2 guard spots, he spent more time at left guard. But I am going to solve left guard in free agency as well. Obviously, the Chargers do have Zion Johnson. I'm going to bring in some competition with him for him, and I'm going to sign Laken Tomlinson, who formerly or currently, most recently, of the Seattle Seahawks, but formerly of the New York Jets. Somebody that Chad Alexander did go out and sign and has some connections to. I think his best work from a PFF blocking grade standpoint is in the gap scheme standpoint, and so I'm going to make sure that Zion Johnson feels some pressure from a veteran presence. I thought about maybe going a little bit more expensive there, but it's always a thing, right? Like if I want the Chargers to sign Ben Bredeson, for example, you probably have to tell him that he's going to be the starter. And
that would suck for somebody.
So I'm trying to balance like realism and like what I would do. So I'm giving myself some insurance at left guard, bringing in some competition of a good player at the tail end of his career, who the team has some history with, and that will be Laken Tomlinson. And then to fill out the offensive line, I'm just going to take a swing on like the 6th round or 7th round on some offensive tackle prospect to be like my next Foster Sorrell candidate. So to recap here, my wide receiver room is obviously Ladd McConkey as wide receiver 1, Amari Cooper wide receiver 2, Quentin Johnson wide receiver 3, Matt Collins wide receiver 4 probably. I didn't get to do a ton of wide receiver work in terms of like day 3 guys, but somebody I do really like in the draft is Kyle Williams from Washington State. I think he's the perfect complement to this specific room. Currently is wide receiver 30 on the consensus board, which I think is a little crazy considering he led the class in yards after catch per reception. So I'm going to draft him on day 3, 4th round, 5th round, and he's going to come in and be my wide receiver 5. And then Darius Davis will be my wide receiver 6 and gadget player.
Nice. So your offensive line is Rashawn Slater, Tomlinson.
Yeah, Tomlinson or Zion.
Okay, so competition.
Competition.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not officially, but all right, cool.
Yeah.
Ryan Kelly, Patrick McCarry, and Joe Alt.
Yeah.
With potentially Zion being the backup, let's say. Jamari's a backup. You have Jake Majors.
Yep.
And then you're taking a swing on somebody.
On day 3 as a swing tackle. And then I guess tight end is also a thing here. So I am going to sign Juwan Johnson. I'm going to spend a $7.5 million cap hit-ish. So he's projected about $9 million per year from PFF. So he's going to come in and be my starting tight end. And then I am going to take Colston Loveland in the draft as well in this scenario. Yeah. We'll see if he makes it to 22. But if I am solving the offense, this is how I'm going to round it out. And so those 2 tight ends are going to be my pass-catching tight ends. Will Dissly and Tucker Fisk are going to be my blocking tight ends. And then I think they could very easily bring back Stone Smart. He is a restricted free agent, so he'll cost you $900,000. And if he gets cut in training camp, that's fine. But that is going to happen as well. So running back, I am bringing back J.K. Dobbins at his projected contract. That should be around a $2.5-3 million cap it there. And then somebody who I'm a huge fan of, I don't know if he'll last until round 3, is going to be Damian Martinez, the running back from Miami. He is probably the running back that I most strongly disagree with the consensus. To me, this is a top 5 running back all day. The numbers are fantastic. The film is amazing. So he's going to be he's going to push Gus Edwards for RB2, and I think eventually in this scenario, Gus Edwards would get cut or traded in training camp.
Yeah, I just cut Gus Edwards before I even got to the offseason.
That's fair. Yeah.
So I was going to look to upgrade in that department otherwise. Yeah, Martinez. Somebody in the chat's mentioned like Pat Bryant. These are some players that we'll have to see when the dust settles on these guys where things end up. But it feels like those guys, you look at the consensus and you look at maybe how people feel about these players. I think those guys are going to move up and be drafted a little higher. So Martinez in the 3rd round, let's say, sounds like, whoa, what the heck? But he's awesome. Like not a top 2, maybe 3 back for me, but he's fun, man.
Yeah, I agree there. So that's the offense. I do not have a ton of money for the defense.
I'm so excited to hear this part.
In this scenario, I did bring back Elijah Molden, but his cap hit is probably going to be higher than what I am projecting. Essentially on defense, I am running it back. The defense we saw last year is going to be basically the same. The big change, obviously, Joey Bosa is going to get cut in this situation. So I'm going to replace Joey Bosa on the roster with Joshua Uche. Again, somebody who this team has a lot of history with, former Michigan man. I think he fits really nicely with what the other edge rushers need. So I am bringing Khalil Mack back in this as well. I can't give all of the resources to the offense. I got to have some people to rush the passer. So I'm going to have Khalil back. Thule will start opposite of him, and then Bud Dupree and Joshua Uche will be my other edge rushers. I debated about having a draft pick in here, but it just is probably easier to tackle that in free agency. I don't think Joshua Uche will cost that much. Defensive line, Morgan Fox, Puna Ford, Sierra Tart, you're all back.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations, because you're all cheap. But I am going to supplement them with, in this case, a 2nd-round defensive tackle prospect. I think that's kind of a good balance here. I was trying to figure out, do I want to bring back the 3 defensive tackles and then draft an edge rusher? Or do I want to sign like a cheap DPR and then draft a defensive tackle? And so that's what I'm going to do here in the 2nd round. So I'm going to kind of balance it out here. I think Darius Alexander from Toledo is a great option here. I think TJ Sanders from South Carolina is a great option here. I don't know do you listen to the NFL Stock Exchange?
Occasionally.
So their nickname for TJ Sanders is Bull Rush McIntyre, and I think it's perfect. I love it so much. So those 2 players are great. I don't think Derek Harmon makes it to 55. Walter Nolan most definitely does not make it to 55. That dude's a freak who probably goes in the top 20. So that's the kind of group that I'm looking for. Darius Alexander is an older prospect, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be on the board for them. But I'm looking to supplement the old guys I'm bringing back with some pass rush juice, and I think TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander, that type of group is where I'm focusing there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your secondary, obviously we know the safeties. I'm guessing you're doing a youth movement, I suppose, with this group.
Well, I figured out a way to bring Christian Fulton back.
Okay, I almost considered that too. I get you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, like I think in my head, if I had left a defensive tackle spot open, maybe I would have, or if I would have signed like another defensive tackle, maybe I could designate a 2nd-round pick for a cornerback. But it's just it's tough for me to pass on this. People in the chat talking about Joshua Farmer for defensive tackle. I'm cool with that. 2nd round is probably a little rich for me, but he is a lot of fun. So I am bringing back Christian Fulton. I'm going to take a day 3 corner in this specific exercise. You tweeted out those clips of the Kansas quarterbacks. Kobe Bryant is probably day 2 guy at this point in time, but his teammate Melo Dotson is somebody who I think fits as well. And so that would make sense to kind of round out my cornerback room. Before the Elijah Molden signing, I did have them taking a day 3 safety pick as well. That probably goes away just because Palmer's or Molden's contract is 3 years. But that goes away. And then congratulations to Nick Neiman and Troy Dye, because you are also back. Because they're going to be like $1 million. I think Troy Dye's contract last year was like 1.7. maybe he gets a nice little bump up after having a good season. But he is somebody who should be back, in my opinion. And then Nick Niemann is a special teamer. I'm cool with it. Bring him back. And then your fifth linebacker, you can probably just take an undrafted free agent and call it good, because apparently Navarro Bowman is a wizard. So undrafted free agent, late day 3 pick. That's kind of how I'm rounding out my defense.
Yeah, Troy Dye is also back for me. Not quite the same as Elijah Molden, safety 3, but he was a guy that stepped up huge. Some guys were out, both guys sometimes were out, and he was a starter, and he was awesome. So Troy Dye being back is awesome for, as Catherine points out, great value.
Yeah, he was. And so in this scenario, I do have Tariq still designated as my starting slot corner. But I think the team showed us at the end of the season that they probably have him ahead of Cam Hart. And so my starting outside corners would be, again, Tariq Still, Christian Fulton, and then Cam Hart is the first corner off the bench. And Derwin James obviously plays a lot of snaps in the slot as well.
Yeah. So you don't, yes, you're keeping Jaw Taylor in this case. I think they keep him regardless, but you're not having him start.
Correct.
People are asking in the chat for.
Yeah, so Jasir Taylor, to me, like, I understand people don't like him, but it makes no sense to cut him, because then at that point you potentially need 2 different players to play in the slot. So he's at minimum, he's a great special teamer who Ryan Ficken loves working with, and that's good enough for me to have him as my CB5 or 6 or whatever.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I get it.
Okay. So to run through a quick recap for me, again, I'm doing offense heavy here. I forgot to mention that I did bring back Taylor Heineke in this scenario to be the backup. I expected him to be kind of like a $4 million-ish contract. And then I'm going to take a day 3 quarterback as well. So at quarterback, I have Herbert, Heineke, a day 3 pick. Running back, I have J.K. Dobbins, Damian Martinez, future cut candidate Gus Edwards, but I guess I could just call it a cut candidate outright. Kamani Vidal, Hassan Haskins, Scott Malik at fullback. At wide tight end, blocking tight end, I have Will Dissly and Tucker Fisk. At move tight end, I have Juwan Johnson and Colston Loveland. X receiver, I have Amari Cooper, Matt Collins, and I guess Brendan Rice, if you want to include him here too. Slot receiver, I have Lad McConkey and Darius Davis. Z receiver, I have Quentin Johnston and Kyle Williams in round 3, day 3, however you kind of want to slice that. Left tackle, I have Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson at left guard / Laken Tomlinson. Center, I have Ryan Kelly and Jake Majors. Right guard, I have Patrick McCarry, Jamari Sawyer. Right tackle, I have Joe Alt, and then some developmental day 3 pick there. On defense, I am bringing back Khalil Mack. I'm bringing back Morgan Fox, Tier Tart, Puna Ford. Tuli Tuipulotu is taking Joey Bosa's spot in the starting roster. And Joshua Uche is taking Tuli's spot as the backup. And then I have Junior Colson, Dan Henley starting a linebacker with Troy Dye, Nick Niemann, and whoever else Navarro Bowman wants at this point. And then corners, I have Tariq Still, Christian Fulton, Cam Hart, Dean Leonard, Jasir Taylor, and then Mello Dotson. He was the only day 3 corner I watched. And then safety, obviously Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, Elijah Molden. I am bringing back Shoni Jefferson on the cheap, and then some other day 3 pick as well. So again, that was $45 million in cap space to the defense and $36 million of cap $45 million of cap to the offense and $37 million of cap to the defense.
Yeah, which was for both of us. We both brought Mac back almost as like a have to. We decided that was something we figured the Chargers would do. And so we had to bake that into our projections anyway. So yeah, not a lot on the defense on your side, not a lot on the offense on my side.
Yeah, very curious to see how you figure that out. Before Tyler gets to his defense heavy situation, of course, I have to tell you guys about our friends over on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Hopefully you were able to get in there and take advantage of the 4 Nations contest. The USA is in the championship there against their arch rival nemesis, Canada. When I came up here, Canada was winning, unfortunately. And so this is where we're at with Prize Picks, right? Football is over. It sucks, but you can still go to Prize Picks and consume daily fantasy sports at the highest level with the NBA. Major League Baseball is just around the corner. WNBA as well. NHL, hockey, all that good stuff is fantastic and on Canada. Tied 1-1. Yes, let's go. USA tied it. Let's go.
USA.
USA. Yeah. Again, that is prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout for the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Looks like USA just scored again. We're good.
USA. USA.
USA. Yeah.
All right. Keep that energy when you see the offense that I have for you guys today.
Yes. Tyler prepared a slideshow. I did.
What
not,
up, everybody? If you don't know who the pitch meeting
Tyler.
guy is, there he is. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a pitch meeting guy. If you don't know who that is, figure out, watch pitch meetings. So mine is a defensive focus, and it felt like drawing the short straw, but it was actually a fun exercise to go through this because not a single Chargers fan wants to go this direction. So it's just all like house money for me to just do whatever and have some
all
fun.
The cool shit.
Exactly. So why defense, guys? Why would you go defense heavy over offensive heavy? Why would you do the dumb thing over the smart thing? Jesse Minter is awesome, and he'll make it work. Like this, the guys that Steven mentioned, running it back, it makes total sense when you have Jesse Minter. What happens if he's gone next year and he brings all his coaches with him? Look at what happened with like Detroit, that exodus of coaches out of there. And maybe Minter's not gone, but if he is, he could take everybody. So I don't know. Maybe you should have the talent in place in case he does leave. You could run the 2024 group back as Steven did and had to, given the constraints. But there are concerns with age and injuries at the edge spot, interior defensive line, and they're all in short deals. You bring these guys back. Now, granted, I didn't think Molden was getting a 3-year deal, so who knows what 10-year deal Poona Ford gets, and he deserves it.
Lifetime contract.
Lifetime contract is fine by me, dude. But what do you do when these contracts are so short? You got to put this influx of talent. And the Rams and the Eagles have been a great model of just investing in defense. Now, the Eagles also invest in offense and have Jeff Stoutland, so things work out okay for them overall. But investing in the defensive line clearly has paid off for those teams. I'd love to send Patrick Mahomes to retirement faster. If you get this defense great, like, wouldn't it be fun? Just imagine, guys, every day watching the Chargers play the Chiefs is just like that Super Bowl game where they're just killing Patrick Mahomes on a play-by-play basis. Doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah.
Woohoo. They also did not, I think the Chargers, as good as Jesse Minter was, they didn't show they could stop the best offenses last year or the best talent across from them. Yes, they went home, I think mostly because the offense was not performing in Houston. They also eventually could not stop Nico Collins, and they could not eventually stop Jamar Chase or T. Higgins in the end, and they could not stop Derrick Henry. So they could not stop Mike Evans. So you got to keep investing in this defense and maybe make it a priority. And their slate coming up, I think, is far more difficult in terms of guys they have to stop. Sure, the Giants, not the greatest quarterback situation, unless they somehow get Stafford, which whatever. That seems to be a random rumor going around. But there's still Malik Neighbors. And on the Jaguars, there's Brian Thomas, and there's CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and all these guys. And then heck, okay, you're going to go and make the postseason. And what from last year was stopping Buffalo or the Ravens as they didn't in that game?
Yeah.
Or if they see the Bengals or they see the Texans again. So I think that adding to this defense is very important here. So,
I would like to add a little bit here. Just because I do think there is this consensus that the Chargers don't need to add to defense because they have a great coaching staff. But don't you want to give a great coaching staff like better pieces to work with? Wouldn't it be nice to see Jesse Minter work with like high-end talent along the defensive line? So I think the Chargers are going to add to it. But I also just think this free agency group is really good with defensive tackles. The draft class is outstanding. Like literally probably the best defensive tackle class we have ever seen. Daniel Jeremiah says there's 24 starting graded defensive tackles in this draft class for him. Most years it's like 8 to 10. So it would be a real shame and a real miscalculation of resources for the Chargers not to address the defensive line in some capacity. Now, I added a second round pick to my group, but it's just not enough, right? Like you want to improve the defense. And I think if 2024 was about identifying the floor of the defense, which is very, very high, 2025 really should be about, elevating the ceiling of the defense. Like, it was a top 10 defense, but it wasn't a top 10 defense against top 10 offenses. And that has to change in order for them to become a legit Super Bowl contender. And so I'm anxious to see the players who you have on here, because I do think the Chargers would be wise to inject some real juice into this pass rush in particular.
Mm-hmm.
We just did cornerbacks. If they want to, sign a corner, I think they'd be smart to go out and improve this defense, because you give a great coach some better pieces and you can actually be a top 5 defense and go head to head with these opposing offenses. So I not to cut you off, but I did want to add that I do think, there's this logic that Jesse Minter did it before, so he can do it again. But I don't think he should have to, and I don't want him to. I want to give him better pieces and improve the defense. So I just wanted to add that there.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned, yes, he did it. Can he do it again? I think he can do it again. But did he do it against the great offenses or great talent? I don't know officially that he can just shut down everybody. Like when Justin Jefferson comes to town, can they shut down everybody with who they had? I don't know. Now, granted, most teams can't. So it's not like it's a, everyone can do it sort of thing with just some more players. But yeah, no, thank you for adding that for sure. My guys returning are the same as you. So Heineke, Dobbins, like Fisk, Smart, I added in there, of course. And frankly, I'm out of money. So Smart was a good option for
future
me.
tight end 1 that's so smart according to PFF.
Oh, thanks, PFF. That's awesome. Khalil Mack is back. Ford, Molden is obviously back. Tart and Dye. Could have thrown Jefferson on there too. There's plenty of names I could have put on here, but it'd been a whole long list. So overall in 2025 cap, I've got like between $45 and $50 million to spend. That's without, or that's, I guess, with including Khalil Mack, already in the 18 million, 20 million, whatever he ends up getting in 2025. So I didn't have a ton. So I wanted to make it count, guys. So I got 3 players: Milton Williams, Will Douglas, and Mike Hilton. I decided, now this is fun because the next slide's going to kill everybody, but this slide, just for a moment, let me have some fun here. So Milton Williams, I got the best pass rushing option for them. It was a bit of a toss-up between him and Osa, but we kind of discussed on our previous show, size, I think, makes a difference here. Milton Williams being a bigger guy. So I'm cool with that. Milton Williams is my pass rusher, and I am not done with defensive tackle either, at least not until I get to the draft. Rasul Douglas, I went with him because of it's just a safer, I think, potentially better, but at minimum safer option at corner. It's only a 2-year deal instead of the 3-year deals or like a Carlton Davis, or someone in our chat mentioned Byron Murphy. So I went with Rasul Douglas here. And then I went with Mike Hilton because, one, didn't watch a ton of corners in this draft class. So it was easier for me to just pay a fake number to this guy than watch guys. So I went with Hilton in the slot, Rasul Douglas on the outside, and Milton Williams as my pass rushing defensive tackle. Your thoughts on the 3 big names that I signed?
I love it. I think it's great vibes, like we talked about with Mike Hilton this past week. The Chargers do need some more size on the outside cornerback spot, and I like not paying the top guy there. I think going down a tier allows you to be a little bit more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Milton Williams to me is like number 1 target in any free agency for me. I would have him ahead of T. Higgins. I would have him ahead of Trey Smith. I think he's like a true game changer at the defensive tackle spot. Still in his prime. There's not the kind of baggage. There's not the kind of injury history. Elite pass rushing production can really change your defense. So last year, I wanted to pull this up. Milton Williams ended the regular season with 54 pressures, which is more pressures combined than Morgan Fox and Puna Ford. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Yep. So that's my big spending on defense. Overall, I knew that because I spent, and because we were going to take more of, so like I'm defensive heavy. So my first 2 picks in the draft are defense, and kind of forced that. I knew that I'd have to take more dart throws like on offense in the draft. So here's my moves on offense here. I don't get Makari and a bunch of really good players on the offensive line. I don't get depth. I don't get any of that. But there were 2 things I needed to do. One, I needed Ryan Kelly. If I did nothing else, it was bring in Ryan Kelly, because I could not think of another center that I would want to go get or find in the draft, or that would want to take at 22, because I couldn't anyway in this simulation. So Ryan Kelly solves it immediately. Mac Hollins is my big receiver addition. Granted, I do have the draft coming up.
Sure.
So bear with me through the rest of that. But Mac Hollins, we're on the same page in terms of wanting Mac Hollins. And then I did go with Juwan Johnson because ultimately the 2025 cap hit wasn't too significant. So overall, like $20-ish million to the offense here for me. Ben Bredesen by default, unfortunately, is your right guard. He would have been someone we'd prefer as a depth signing for sure.
Yeah,
But in this case, because we cut Trey Pipkins, I have the issue of needing a right guard.
for
And it's
sure.
not a great interior class. I'm going with Ben Bredesen, who statistically would be an improvement. It's just not a significant one. It's not a great guard situation. So my offense is basically generally right now the same as last year, but I improved at center and I improved at tight end. And I guess Mac Hollins is better, Simi Fehoko. Your thoughts on the defense and offense?
I like that we were both on the same page with Juwan Johnson. I think
Yeah.
the more we hear about this draft class, like I think there is a pretty good chance that Colston Loveland does come off the board before the Chargers pick at 22. We'll see what happens. Obviously, things can change. But if they don't sign a pass catching tight end and they miss out on Colston Loveland, like it's going to be, again, rough sledding, I think, in that position. So I think I'm glad we're both on the same page there. Glad we're on the same page inadvertently with Matt Collins. We did not talk about this. Like I messaged Tyler last night. I was like, hey, do you want to know who I picked? And he was like, no, don't tell me. So that was good to see. In your scenario, I think the Chargers offensive line would be better than last year.
Right.
Because you're getting a significant upgrade for Ryan Kelly, and Ben Bredesen just schematically fits a lot more. But obviously you didn't have the kind of resources that I had to go get like legit guys. And so you at least, I think you probably went bring back Khalil, and then Ryan Kelly was like probably second on your list, I'm assuming.
Basically, like if I had only $10 million, it would have been spent on Ryan Kelly here.
Yeah. And I think that's smart. I think at minimum, you want to solve the center spot. You want to get a pass catching tight end in your scenario. So I probably would have operated the same way.
Yeah. So my issue, of course, is what do I do in the draft?
Yeah.
and I have my draft here. I put Kenneth Grant. I'm fine with any of the other options. I think one will fall to them. You know what I'm getting at. A defensive tackle at 22 is generally what I'm going for. Loveland might not be there at 22.
You did a whole mock draft, basically.
I did a whole mock draft. Okay. So let's just say Kenneth Grant, because that would have, if there's three guys there, it would be Kenneth Grant. So let's say Kenneth Grant in round 1. In round 2, I doubled down with defensive line. Went with Ole Miss pass rusher Princely Umanmielen, who I think is awesome. Very productive, bendy rusher, slightly undersized compared to like other edge rushers. But I love his kind of profile more, and it's different than what they have. If Khalil Mack is back and Thule is here, then I want someone who's twitchier, bendier. So my receiver help finally comes in the form of Pat Bryant here in round 3.
Your receiver room sucks.
Our receiver room totally sucks. And Pat Bryant, I think, but consensus board, he's like a round 4 guy, but it seems like there's love for him. So Pat Bryant in round 3. You and I are on the same page about Damian Martinez. So he was my round 4 option. I'll get to my depth chart in a second. Round 5 went to Jake Rinningstool from Clemson, the tight end, and the defensive tackle, CJ West. So my defensive tackle room has plenty of additions to it. My round 6 running back is Marcus Yarns out of Delaware. If Greg Roman remembers that he can throw to his running backs, that is the selection I'm going for. There's some bigger running backs on day 3, but I don't want to do like the big back Gus Edwards replacement. I think Martinez in style, I think and he's a bigger guy anyway, does give them that. So I wanted someone who could contribute on special teams, be a receiving option that maybe Vidal is not. Then I went with Dante Trader Jr., the safety out of Maryland, the only player on this list that I haven't watched. But I just wanted a 4th safety, and he was from Maryland, and there's a connection there. So I went with that. Sure. Rounded out round 7 with Andrew Armstrong, the receiver from Arkansas, who I like quite a bit. And then Cooper Mays is like the only late day 3 center I've watched other than Jonah Monheim. And I didn't want to put him here because he was kind of like gone-ish. So I went with Cooper Mays here from Tennessee. So yes, my receiver room is not great. Here's my ugly depth chart for everyone who hates colors and what I'm about to do here. I didn't put quarterback on here because that's implied. But for me, running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Martinez, Haskins, Vidal, and Yarns. My receiver room, the starting group is Lad McConkey, Pat Bryant, and Quentin Johnston.
Oh my gosh.
maybe even Mac Hollins starts here. But Darius Davis, Mac Hollins, Andrew Armstrong rounded out. I put Darius Davis twice, my bad. Brandon Rice is there somewhere. Tight end at least gets an upgrade. There's an upgrade in pass catcher there. Jawan Johnson, Will Dissly, Stone Smart, Jake Brittingstool, and Tucker Fisk. My line is generally not great. but Ryan Kelly is at least an option that I think is a good option. Just very concerned about longevity there. Bredesen is the other starting guard for me. Now I get to the defense, the whole defensive side of things here. So my defensive line will kill you.
Yeah, your defensive line is fucking awesome.
and you're not going to throw on this team either. So my edge rushers, the starters are Mack and Thule, but I have Unman Mielen as a backup option with Dupree. So I spent a second rounder on an edge rusher there. My defensive tackle room is Milton Williams, Kenneth Grant, Una Ford, and TR Tart. CJ West is also on there as well, who is fantastic. And Eboigbe and Ogbonia, we'll see how many they keep. We'll see if they have a role. But I definitely go with this group. Linebackers, same as usual. My corners, I'm going to have Tarheeb still starting on the outside with Mike Hilton in the slot. So Rasul Douglas, Tarheeb still on the outside, Mike Hilton in the slot. And then safety is basically the guys that we have. So red is for guys that we brought back. Blue is for the draft. Green is for signings. That's on here. I even wrote some pros and cons.
Wow.
I know.
Put me to shame tonight, dude.
So the defensive line is the best one we're ever going to see in decades for the Chargers. The corners are good floor, quality players, also have some flexibility. I think in this scenario, if you do this route, which I don't love, you can budget like into your offensive line and tight end options in a class that's desperate for options after 22. Like if instead of forcing it, I think you can budget this group a little bit. And then overall, I did add 5 pass catchers and 2 running backs with small contracts and draft picks. So there's new bodies in the room, that's for sure. But you do have to pray that Ladd McConkey becomes Ladd McJesus, as I wrote on here, because this is not a great receiver room, unfortunately. The interior offensive line could be terrible, could be great, but it could be terrible in a hurry. And then in the short term, and probably why I would prefer to go offense anyway, the worst coordinator gets the least investment. I would prefer if Greg Roman got some more investment because I don't trust Greg Roman as much as I trust Jesse Minter. So that is the defensive heavy approach. Unfortunately, when you take your first 2 picks and spend them on defensive linemen, and you have to give all of your money for the most part to your defense, it doesn't give you a lot of money for a receiver. And as much as I'd love to pay a receiver, I would still prioritize Ryan Kelly over. I can't afford Amari Cooper or Adams or Higgins or Slayton, but I would prefer to pay a better center and figure it out in the draft than pay a receiver and try to figure out center in the draft.
Yeah. So for our visual audience, visual learners here, I'm going to add, this is my offensive depth chart here. So you can kind of see how I went through this. And then I have like the cap hits down at the bottom here. I color coordinated also. Yellow players are players I brought back, and then green players are players that I signed, and then blue ones are ones that I drafted here. So again, I already went through mine, but just so you can see the visual side of mine here. And then let me add in my defense as well real quickly. Oh shoot, put the wrong button. My bad. Live TV, folks. And here we go. So I think obviously you feel great about my offense, but my defense, again, is like running it back and then adding Joshua Uche and Darius Alexander or TJ Sanders. So again, the Chargers are going to meet somewhere in the middle here, but this is where my defense ended up at. So again, a lot of yellow for the defense, a lot of green for the offense there.
Yeah, that was something. I think importantly between both of ours is that, and as unfortunate as it might seem for some Chargers fans who hope for several huge names on both sides of the football, it's impossible to upgrade and spend that much and draft everybody that you're praying is there. It's impossible to do what some Chargers fans are hoping the Chargers could do. It's just not feasible. And someone asked, like, wait, is the $80 million you have, does that bake in the $20 million in rookie contracts and in-season budget and stuff like that? Yeah, so we started with all the cuts and with the bump up, like at a projected $100 million. Okay, well then there goes 20 for in-season budget and rookies. Okay, let's say you bring back Khalil Mack, which I think they are. Okay, there goes $18 million. And suddenly you have a lot less to work with than I think Chargers fans are really thinking. So as unfortunate as unbalanced as both of our teams are, it's at least good to see that, like, you can't fix everything. If you play it realistically, you cannot fix everything.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think I understand why everybody wants the big names, but I was listening to the Athletic Football Show and they were going through the free agencies of previous Super Bowl participants and like all the lessons that you can take from those specific seasons. And honestly, like the best way to build a true Super Bowl contender is to have like your pillars established through the draft and then you supplement the pieces through free agency. And I believe that is how this Chargers regime is going to operate. I can't really see them going out and spending big on a Trey Smith or spending big on a Tegans is not available, but that kind of archetype when they have so many other pieces, right? Like, would you rather have Trey Smith and Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson, or would you rather have my scenario, Ryan Kelly and Patrick McCarry and Zion Johnson or Laken Tomlinson? Not that that's the exactly realistic approach, but the Chargers don't need to pay elite players at every position as much as they kind of just need to raise the floor, right? Like last year they shopped in the bargain bin aisle. They don't need to go all the way to the expensive shit. They probably need to meet in the middle there. And I think that's how we'll see the Chargers operate. I think signing multiple bodies who raise the floor is really more important for this specific team than it is to let's go make a big swing and have fewer resources to raise the floor. That's kind of how I'm operating for this specific offseason is we've kind of saw hints of the ceiling, right? Like there were some moments where we we're like, okay, like the Bengals win, the Broncos win, things like that. We can see where this is headed. But then there's the Chiefs' first loss, there's the Steelers' loss, there's the Ravens' loss, where we're like, they just don't have the floor to compete with these teams. And then the Texans game was the biggest example of they don't have the floor here to compete in the playoffs. And so I think that for me is how I'm kind of approaching this free agency. And even in this scenario where I could have spent huge dollars on offensive position groups, I was still kind of like, well, I need Khalil Mack back. Like I need, some resources to the defense. So I just don't believe this team should take those big swings. I think they should take those lower mid-level swings and help raise the floor of this team going forward. And the ceiling changers can come in the draft.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. The good news is plenty of money, plenty of picks, so they can do a little bit of both, but they have to do a little bit of both. It cannot be the three favorite names and then pray the draft works out.
Yeah. And we kind of did the three favorite names back in 2022, and that didn't work. Granted, much different coaching staff, much different front office, but we just did the big name offseason, and it kind of sucked. Like there was still a lot of really poor roster choices after that. And I think, Joe Ortiz would be able to overcompensate for some big swings. But I think this specific team just has way too many needs. I think they need to fill them with multiple dart throws instead of one, Hail Mary dart throw, if you will.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
But man, this was super fun. Obviously, we're not like super contract experts here. The cap hits we kind of just like guessed. We're not Arjun. If we had Arjun on here, we could do a full simulation. But he's busy working for an NFL team. So, but we ask his opinion every once in a while. He gives us some good resources. But doing this made me realize, like, man, this goes really, really fast. Like, I did kind of start like, oh, let's go full tilt on the offense, and I kind of was like headed towards a Thule, Bud Dupree, Joshua Uche, and some rookie draft pick as an edge room, and I was like, I can't do this.
No, I completely get that. It was, especially if they don't bring back Khalil Mack. Granted, they could pivot and pay somebody else, but I love Thule, of course. Like we really do like Thule and what he can do. He can't be your edge one. And frankly, I had to give him competition to be edge 2 officially. So is your defensive line issue is my receiver issue.
Yeah.
The difference is like Puna Fort rocks and Tart rocks. And granted, I guess I have McConkey, but then the rest of my room is, something else.
Yeah, dude, your defensive line would be filthy to watch. Like,
Yeah, the
it would
good
be...
news is my terrible offense only needs to score 7 points.
Which is kind of what last year was. You
Yeah.
just basically I ran the defense back. You basically ran the offense back plus Jamal Johnson, essentially, and Ryan Kelly.
And Matt Collins.
Matt Collins is just bigger Simi Fehoko, so
yeah,
it is what it is. Okay, Tyler, any final thoughts before we have 3 super chats that we got to get to before we head out?
I think we'll cover it when we do more simulations like this, but very curious where we start to overlap. And like, obviously we saw some players on here. I think we're on the same page with some draft picks, some free agent signings. So curious to see how we overlap once we're on the same team, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. Our guy, Dark Samus, very much on brand as always. He says that he prefers Jared Wilson over Jake Majors. Wilson will test like an athletic freak. I hope we don't pass on a generational center prospect on early day 2. Brother, if he's a generational prospect, he's not an early day 2 center prospect. Yeah, he would be a first rounder. There's a lot of technique issues for Jared Wilson. Like, there's a lot of posture issues. There's a lot of poor hand placement issues. Like, yeah, he's definitely athletic. I really wish he would have stayed in school. He, in my opinion, is not ready to start in the NFL. Like, he is somebody who has to be a backup. And that's just not what you want to take a center prospect on day 2. Like, if you're taking a center on day 2, like, that guy should probably be starting for you. And I just don't think he's ready for that. So, I do feel a little bit better about this center class now that I've watched a few guys. Jake Majors is my true center prospect number 1. But Zabel, obviously from North Dakota State, could play center. I forget his first name, but Mbao from Purdue could play center, I think. That dude's an athletic freak who does a fake jump set, which is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I did watch Cooper Mays as well. He's a lot of fun. Drew Kendall from Boston College is good. So there are some solid options, but for me, Jake Majors, I think he just checks a lot of boxes for what I look for in a day 3 center prospect, and that's kind of where I'm going for.
Yeah, 2 things. One, I don't have to buy into it, but as you saw on social media today, Drew Dahlman's projected contract of, what was it, $22 million a year?
It's disgusting. That's hard pass. I am a little hesitant for his number of $11 million per year that PFF is giving him. Giving him $20 million, which is $2 million more than Creed Humphrey makes, is insanity. There's zero reason to justify that, even in a growing cap. So when I saw that, I was like, I messaged the guy who tweeted it out, and he was like, no, here's the clip. Like, this is real. They're talking about it. I was like, I can't believe this.
And then second thing, we did this last year with the receiver class kind of, and like Lad McConkey or Quentin Johnson. So like, where would Quentin Johnson be in this receiver class? And we said not top 5, whatever it was. It wasn't great. Where would, let's say, like Hunter Norzad be in this class for you right now?
I would have him behind Zabel probably, but he would be next on that list.
Whew. I know you haven't watched everyone, but geez.
Yeah. I would have Jake Majors probably graded pretty similar to Bo Limmer, who I did like.
Okay.
I had Bo Limmer as like a 4th round grade, and that's right where I have Jake Majors. But yeah, I also really liked Hunter Norzad. I thought he was fantastic. The fact that he lasted until round 5, I think it was end of 4 actually. Anyways, the fact that he lasted that far and he went to the Chiefs is insane. So
yeah, he's
probably their starting right guard next year.
Cool,
which is great.
Good for them.
Yep. But yeah, I'm not a big Jake Majors guy. I think he should have gone back to school. William wants to know if the Chargers could trade Bosa for even a late rounder. No. That contract is pretty immovable from a trade perspective, and like, why would you do that if you're another team? Like, why would you not just go spend $6 million on Joshua Uche or something like that? So unfortunately, his trade market is essentially 0.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Haynen just sent a super sticker. Appreciate that. Had a great comment earlier, so shout out to him.
Yeah.
And then Christian says that They're surprised none of us added Darius Slayton at receiver. I have him in almost every scenario I do.
I was broke, so I couldn't add anybody really. I guess I added Jawan Johnson, but Slayton's APY was what, 14?
I think it was higher than that, man.
Yeah, and like in my scenario, I could not afford that contract, especially with Ryan Kelly being the
okay. So PFF has him at 13.5.
Yeah, no.
But considering the cap increase, I think all of these APY projections are probably going to go up. I mean, we just saw Elijah Molden get over 6 per year.
Yeah.
So I think these APYs are going to go up. My thing with Slayton is like, if you can guarantee me that the Chargers can get a good, like, immediate impact X receiver in the draft, I'm definitely more on board with Darius Slayton. And I'm interested, right? It's not like I'm completely saying no here. But the Chargers, like, they need a boundary receiver who can make contested catches. Big bodied receiver, I think, is kind of like their number one option here. But I am interested in Slayton. You have to kind of accompany him with another big body receiver. So maybe you get Slayton and Matt Collins, and that kind of works. But I think priority number one at receiver is solving the X position. And Amari Cooper has like 7 connections to this team. So, and Slayton has some as well. But
yeah,
I think Cooper playing X and hitting at X gives them some more value.
Yeah, I agree.
Last one here. Oh, we just got another one. Anthony says prioritize O-line and D-line. It will elevate. I'm assuming that is supposed to say everyone else.
Out of curiosity, chat, which direction between the two of our scenarios do you think the Chargers would go? Are they spending on Amari Cooper? And like, are they spending and receiving options? The line at play, absolutely. I think obviously we feel the offensive line, they'll do it.
Yeah.
But would they spend on a receiving core or would they spend on a defensive line? And I guess a secondary. I'm very curious what the Chargers would actually do of these two. I hope they do neither, but I'm curious which direction they would go.
If you're asking me purely free agency, I think this defensive free agent class is much better than the offensive free agent class.
Definitely.
And then you could dedicate the draft to offense.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
That's like probably the smarter like allocation of resources.
Yeah.
But
yeah. My concern was really center and tight end. Like I feel like they have to take care of that in free agency.
Yeah. I think getting a pass catching tight end is probably more important than receiver for this specific offense. But we'll see. A few short weeks away from free agency.
Yes.
Our last one here from Win says, what's the lowest Davante Adams would sign for?
I don't know. $20 million.
Yeah, in my head, like $25 million makes sense.
What? Okay, so
right now his current APY was at 28, and that was wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are both going to sign for more than that, I think. So if you are Davante Adams, I think you still probably want to sign at a pretty respectable number in terms of like being in the top 15-ish in APY. And so $25 million per year, you can heavily incentivize that contract. And, you're doing 2 years, $50 million in total value, essentially. And, still allow him to be in the top 15 in APY where he feels comfortable. But he's not exactly like breaking the bank.
So kind of ahead of Keenan, Cooper, and Diggs' current or former contracts.
Yeah.
But not like, I don't know, AJ Brown's contract.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Cooper Kupp signed his extension for 26.7. Davante was at 25. Nico Collins 24.25, which is a huge bargain for the Texans. DK Metcalf is probably going to get an extension this year. So like I kind of looked at this and I was like, okay, what's the floor here? And then I looked and I saw Michael Pittman at 23.3. And I'm like, there's no way Devontae Adams is signing for less than Michael Pittman. So like 25 kind of made sense for me.
Yeah, 25 sounds good.
And yes, I would be very interested in that. So we'll see. All right. That is going to do it for us today. We have a fun Friday for you guys. Not the two of us, but Alex Insdorf has a great interview coming tomorrow. And then Alex Katzen is going to be back with Katzen's Corner and do a preview of the Combine. So a couple other videos dropping on the channel over the next day or two that you guys can go ahead and look out for. And then Tyler and I will be back on Tuesday next week for our regularly scheduled show. So this has been fun, man. I had a great time doing this. You obviously did the slideshow and put me to shame a little bit, but it was a great time.
Yeah, it was fun. It got like the creative juices flowing for sure. It was frustrating. Absolutely. I deleted the spreadsheet several times. But in the end, it was all fun.
It was fun. It was fun. Your offense will not score any points. My defense will probably be much worse, but
your defense will still top 10. We just saw it last year. Like
probably more the back half of the top 10 though.
Yeah. All right.
Is what it is. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, if you are listening to this, make sure and leave us a rating or review. We do greatly appreciate it. YouTube audience, comment. Let us know what you think about our choices. Let us know which scenario you would favor. I think most fans would probably favor the obvious one. But Tyler made a hell of a sales pitch, man. And that defense nobody's scoring on that defense. So it'd be a lot of fun to watch as well. All right. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you guys next time. As always, bolt up.